Alright, it took long enough, but this is the first movie that I'm willing to admit I was completely wrong about. I'm sure just like me, you saw the trailer over and over and over. By the time the second trailer released, I was fully convinced that I had seen the entirety of this movie, but yeah, I was completely wrong. We're going to be taking a look at the remake of Speak No Evil and then comparing it with the original 2022 Speak No Evil. Before we get into it, if you're new here, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It'll really help the channel out a lot and maybe get the algorithm on my side. I don't know what I've done to it, but lately it has not been on my side. So a like and hitting the subscribe button would be hugely appreciated. So to start off, I'm just going to give a basic spoiler-free review of the 2024 remake. After that, I'm going to get into some spoilers regarding the 2024 remake, following that up with comparing a few differences between the 2024 remake and the 2022 original. The Speak No Evil remake comes out on Friday the 13th of September 2024. It is directed by James Watkins, and it stars James McAvoy as Patty, Mackenzie Davis as Louise, Eileen Francis as Kiera, and Scoot McNairy as Ben. These are some hard names to get through. Anyways, the plot goes when an American family is invited to spend the weekend at the idyllic country estate of a charming British family that they befriended on vacation. What becomes a dream holiday soon warps into a snarled psychological nightmare. So to begin with, the story was great. It's basically the exact same setup, but it's not totally what you would expect or think from the trailers and if you've seen the original. This one uses the original source material nicely, but manages to make it its own, and in my opinion, justify its existence, despite being the fastest remake ever. I mean, it was 2 years. Like, that's fast as the story here is very fast-paced. There wasn't really a boring scene in this movie. There was always this sense of dread and just uncomfortable, awkward tension. The main couple, got a feel for these two idiots. Very beginning of the movie, and the parents are just totally cool with James McAvoy's character giving the main couple's daughter a ride on a moped. No helmet, stranger, like my mom would have snatched me up so fast. Like, Louise and Ben make it very easy for James McAvoy and his wife to see that they're perfect for these people, or they just don't like their daughter very much. So yeah, anyways, they hang out at the resort after meeting for like 2 seconds before the moped thing. And even though the hangouts are brief, the mask seems to slip right from the get-go when it comes to James McAvoy, and they're just like, okay. Louise's faces, I just couldn't get over them. Every time James McAvoy made a little quip, I was like, okay, what I'm thinking is on your face right now, and I love that.
Louise, is there anything you'd like to say?
She, and especially her husband, still retained the polite demeanor from the original, despite being American. In the original, they were Danish. But even so, it's very clear from the beginning that the mom's just not going to keep playing by the end of this. Then, I was actually waiting for him to proposition and seduce James McAvoy, because this dude, I swear, seemed way more into him and even James McAvoy's wife instead of hearing his wife out. Very odd behavior, but that's a good chunk of what makes the characters them. So anyways, they get home from the holidays, get a postcard from the couple asking to come and visit. Again, very odd. You met them like once and they were kind of invasive and overstepping from the get-go. And in the original, I remember it was kind of a question on whether they'd go or not go, but here the wife's just kind of like, okay, and it's settled. Like, that man wanted some more James McAvoy. But they get there, and things from the trailer start happening. The cold water therapy, the boy showing his tongue, or lack thereof, to Ben, and, you know, all that. I was sitting there already totally done with the dad, and I was still kind of holding on to Louise being that bitch, and maybe about midway through the second act, it switches up. Now, I planned on watching the remake, then the original, but then I thought that would be kind of stupid, so I watched the original first, and yeah, this is where my anxiety came in. The movie still retained its goofiness to a degree along with the original's story beats, but it went full throttle with the intensity and then eventually completely goes in its own direction. I couldn't have been more happy. I was convinced I'd basically seen the movie already with the trailers and the original, but no. And yes, you could say that the movie's ending is Hollywood or too different from the original. Yeah, you just can't win most of the time with people. I think this movie did what a remake's supposed to do, perhaps a little too soon, but it managed to stay in line with the source material but give us some new things that kept it fresh and intriguing. Moving on to the characters, Louise is pretty much the one who kicks things into high gear when shit goes down. Ben is more in line with the original movie's characterization. He mostly does nothing. I think he may have been crushing on James McAvoy for a good chunk of this movie. That's why I can explain that character's decision making. But the main couple in this movie isn't as happy, I guess you could say, as the original movie's couple. There's just always this underlying like line of tension in the room with them. In a way, while stupid, Louise and Ben felt a little more real and human, much more believable characters in this movie, in my opinion. As far as the other couple goes, James McAvoy owns this role and is the the perfect blend between charming and funny to, what the fuck did he just say? Like, he looks like he put his all into this role, and it paid off in spades because the dude was terrifying, funny, and charming, sometimes all at once.
Oh, well, that is very sweet of you to say.
And as far as his wife Kiera goes, I felt a little bit more of a sadness, if anything, towards her character, especially here than in the original. There are hints of DV with their relationship. Louise notices something early on in the movie, and once that happens and you start seeing the way James McAvoy and his partner function, it's very clear what's being implied, especially towards the end. Her character is timid, overbearing, and kinda endearing, but overall just kind of sad once it's said and done. Now, the kids in this movie, Agnes and Ant, are so much better. Not only are they aged up, which at first I wondered how that was even gonna work, but once the movie fleshes them out, it works so much better and it helps the film, especially during the second and third act. The cinematography in this movie is gorgeous, and it takes place in the countryside, very similar to the original, very pretty shots, great sound design, and just an overall very good looking movie. The movie itself isn't scary per se, well, the situation is, obviously, but this definitely leans more into the psychological thriller genre with horror elements sprinkled throughout. I don't even think there were more than maybe 3 jump scares, and even then they weren't the focal point of the scene. It was alongside something that was actually intense. I thought after watching the original first that I'd be able to maybe relax towards the end and watch how the remake plays it out, and no. I was white knuckling during some spots towards the end, so while not scary, the movie does a decent job at building up these people and their dynamic, putting them into a more realistic situation and making you awkward and uncomfortable.
Very good.
Alongside the fact that you know something is wrong, it made the movie really enjoyable and fun to watch. Look, in the end, the movie isn't a masterpiece or anything, but after the horrible trailers and marketing and the fact that the movie came out just 2 years after the original, I had doubts, but luckily I was very wrong, and I'd say the Speak No Evil remake is a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Enjoyable, you got some dark comedy mixed in with the awkward and uncomfy atmosphere. It still has some of the dumbest character decisions rivaling The Strangers Chapter 1, and it has a slight case of been there, done that, but it manages to save itself from feeling too familiar and derivative by delivering a highly enjoyable psychological thriller to kick off the start of fall. Okay, now that we're through the review, here's your warning now. We're about to get into some spoilers. Okay, the third act, yeah, it was everything I wanted the originals to be. No matter how much time kept passing in the original, I was holding out hope the original couple would fight back, and nope. So here it was, and it was extremely satisfying. Like, I am so glad I saw the original first. It's like, okay, here we go. This is gonna lead us into the third act, and it's gonna be super bleak and dark and whatever, and then it just completely switches up with the dynamics between the couples being somewhat different, especially since it's revealed that Kiera lost a baby, and that's why she took Agnes to the room whenever Claire and Ben were arguing. Yeah, that happens in this movie too. Luckily, the couple was clothed this time. Still wrong, but I appreciated the clothes because that was just nasty in the original. But anyways, due to Ant and Agnes being aged up in the remake, you can see that Ant was a lot more proactive in attempting to tell Agnes that something was wrong. In this version of the movie, Agnes also has a phone, and like Ant, she's also older and has a little bit more awareness on what's going on. He actually does try to write her a note, which I saw some people took issue with, the boy in the original not doing, but he does it here, and unfortunately the note is in a different language, so she can't read it, and he actually eats the note, which further solidifies that something is very clearly wrong. Make a long story short, the son is able to sneak into the parents' bedroom and steal these keys from James McAvoy. He cleverly lures Agnes into the shed with this football, and there's this like basement there, and he goes downstairs with her and shows her all of these mementos that James McAvoy and his wife have kept from the families that they've murdered over the years, including his families, and everything indicating to Agnes that her parents and her are next. So in this version of the movie, Agnes actually takes pictures of all the evidence with her phone. So the mom, and I actually noticed that the mom finds out first that something's wrong, at least like to this degree, whereas in the original, it was the dad that found out and was having to hold his tongue for a bit. So that was a nice little change. But before I get into more of the third act, a few other differences or changes that I can think of when it comes to the remake. Comment down below if you remember, if I missed any, but here's some of the ones that I can think of. Moped scene didn't happen in the original, but it tips you off from the get-go in this one that the couple isn't totally right. James McAvoy's character also doesn't introduce himself and his wife at the resort during the dinner like they did in the original. Louise and Ben also decided to go on the trip quicker as opposed to the original, where they got somewhat of an opinion from a friend at a dinner. Then we have the role play scene at the restaurant. That was a new addition to the movie for sure. The whole under the table thing, my theater had a field day with that scene. The way the original couple functioned, I think witnessing something like that would have outright killed them in itself. With that scene being added in, they cut the scene of them riding home with the other couple from the original, with Patrick or Patty being drunk and shouting at them over the music. Unclear why they cut it here, especially since it made the car scene with James McAvoy and Ben in the movie a little pointless. Like, there was no meaning behind it anymore since they cut the scene. The screaming scene is still here, so there's that. The babysitter in the original helping do the dirty work later for the couple was a really good twist and just felt all kinds of fucked up. So it was pretty shocking that it was changed here, but given how the third act plays out, I guess it kind of makes sense. The dude who worked at the restaurant up the road is the baddie in this one versus their babysitter. Then next you got the cold water therapy scene, which is a new scene for the remake and highlights even more of the opposing family's odd behavior, such as James McAvoy not caring that Aunt can't swim, and Louise noticing a bruise on Kiara that she just brushes off. More DV implications here that weren't really present in the original. Another key thing that's new here is that Louise sexted with another dad from Agnes's school, so Ben and her are already at odds with that before the movie even starts. They're actually arguing about that instead of having sex like in the original, which is what prompted Kiara to go and get Agnes and take her to the bed. From that point, the scene where they pack and leave is basically the same up until when they get back. Aunt starts trying more than the original character ever seemed to do. Earlier in the film, he tried showing her bruises, but it didn't go anywhere. Here, he writes her a note, but it's in a foreign language, so she can't read it. That doesn't work, so the little man eats the note, and then when the whole twist reveal happens, where he shows Agnes the evidence hidden away, and she takes pictures of it to show her parents. I was actually impressed with both kids committing and managing to get away with it and pulling that off for as long as they did before James McAvoy's character caught on. Here's where it got really different with Agnes. Like I said, showing the mom first versus the dad finding the son dead and the little like hot tub they had in the original. The entire time the parents and Agnes were together, I was convinced that James McAvoy and his wife were gonna like kill the son at any moment. Luckily that didn't happen and they try to leave, have a flat tire, so there's like this painful and slow scene of James McAvoy repairing it. Agnes pretends that she has her period, so she cut her finger, pretended that she was bleeding. Like, the commitment was there, but it seems like they've already caught on. Somehow, after James McAvoy repairs it, they eventually leave, and they actually do try to get Aunt to escape with them. McAvoy doesn't let it happen, and is pretty much just playing with them, which I love the scene because everybody kind of already knows what was about to go down. It was just a matter of who was gonna make the first move. It went on for so long, but it was so good. Eventually, he uses the clicker instead of having the son open the gate, and the second they're about to leave, he throws the son in the pond. Their original plan was to get the son to like go and open the gate for them, and they were gonna like probably pull him in the car, but by some miracle the dad actually does something and he gets out of the car and actually manages to save the son. But for some reason Louise isn't quite ready to be a baddie yet with the box cutter that she snagged for herself earlier, and her and Agnes are at gunpoint by the time Ben fishes Aunt out of the pond, and the couple plans on killing the parents and both of the kids together all at once. Contrast from the original, but that's when shit really kicks into high gear because whenever James McAvoy tries to inject Louise, she slices his face with the box cutter. Agnes had grabbed one of the syringes that I think dropped, or someone dropped whenever Louise cut him, and they're able to overpower and manage to escape and lock them in the room. At this point, the movie pretty much just goes home invasion style type of horror, and it just worked so well. To a certain degree, the writing is kind of on the wall and you can pretty much see where the movie's going, but that didn't make it any less satisfying for me. For a sec, I was really only pulling for Louise and the kids, but the dad seemed to show some sort of backbone, as good as it could get in this situation, at the end by jumping off the roof so he could hold the ladder for the kids and his wife. Before that, Louise had killed the couple's accomplice, and Louise got James McAvoy good with some acid, leaving pretty much Kiara to finish it. Doesn't happen. She even tries to come off as scared and remorseful, implying that she was maybe a victim of his too. At some point, never fully goes there. The mom rocks her shit with the shingle above, and she falls off the roof. It seems almost over. The kids and Louise make it down, but James McAvoy shows up with a gun after being out of commission for a sec due to said acid attack. And there's a slight standoff, but Agnes, who's at gunpoint, gets him with a syringe of whatever they were going to kill her with earlier. Movie ends with the family and even Aunt alive too, as he bashes James McAvoy's head in with the brick. Yeah. Look, I think the original is so good and a very well-made movie, but this ending versus the original where the couple is just watching and basically allowing their daughter to have her tongue cut out and kidnapped from them while they just scream, yell, and throw the most mediocre fit ever, followed by stripping nude and being stoned to death. Look, I get it. Horror is horror. It's supposed to be scary and terrifying and even bleak at times. However, especially for all of those that are worried about it being too similar to the original, I'd say the ending is being criticized way too much for being different. Not every movie has to end on a bleak note. This is just my opinion, but the ending for the original was way too unrealistic as far as people having some sort of instinct to protect their child regardless of the situation. The original couple weren't even at gunpoint. They allowed it to happen, which makes the "you let us" line in the original hit a little bit harder than the line does in the remake, because Louise says absolutely fucking not. Waiting almost just a little too long for that. The thing is, everyone reacts differently in horrible situations. But fighting back and maybe dying while trying was way more believable and enjoyable to watch than the original couple just allowing themselves to be bullied and violated. I was also glad both kids lived. Bleak movies are fine and can even be great. In this situation though, with this type of movie and the way that it was handled, I would say that the characters' changed fates and wildly different ending are a happily welcome surprise. Negativity is gonna plague this movie, I'm sure, and I can understand. People are very passionate about films and will die on hills for them. I'm on the hill of Scream 4 is better than any of 5 or 6's good elements combined. So if you like the Speak No Evil original versus the Speak No Evil remake, more power to you. I don't think I could ever rewatch it based on how hopeless it is. With the remake, it's so zany and off the wall at times before it gets intense and shit that it's just a lot of fun. Also, James McAvoy, like, come on. Have you seen Speak No Evil? What did you think of it? Do you prefer the original or remake? Comment below and let me know. As always, thank you guys so much for your support. I'm still a little bit under the weather, but hopefully I'm gonna be getting over it by the end of this weekend. I'm hoping to get this out on Friday the 13th, but that's the day that I'm currently filming, so it may not happen. I'm trying to power through here, but this may be a Saturday the 14th release. Leave a like and share, and I'll see you in the next one.